Think about it starting from your knees. You're going to place the stick to the swell of your back. Simply put, your goal should mainly be that your stick is going to be completely flat through the entire portion of the spine. For most of you, as soon as you get here, you're going to end up dropping your hips into an anterior pelvic shift. And I've talked about that in other videos before, where your pelvis begins to drop anteriorly this way. To compensate, you may also have some kind of a kyphotic rounding. This is a huge no-no. You'll see the stick is actually just falling off my back from here. You don't want to have this pattern here. If you do have this is probably going to happen. What's probably going to happen is that your transverse abdominis is no longer going to be there to stabilize your spine. It is going to be your auxiliary muscles like your external obliques, your internal obliques, your rectus abdominis. They're going to be the ones that are going to stabilize in that circumstance. Just think of it this way. If I'm here with this anterior pelvic shift and I'm rounded, my lower portions of my abdomen, everything down here, are going to be overextended. The tensegrity there is off, so I will not be capable of activating that musculature. So this is a big no-no when it comes to your mechanics. Now, the first thing that you'll want to focus on when you're doing this exercise is bringing your hips up just a slight bit. You'll see that my hips are going to almost match the position of my shoulders here, almost at that level there. For most people, by the time they get to here, they're still going to have some kind of an anterior tilt. So what you're going to do is actually do a slight posterior tilt and then brace down on the abdomen, not tightening it, but retracting your navel as far as you can, and that's going to get you here. Next thing that you might go into as a compensation when you do this posterior pelvic tilt is you might begin to kyphotically round your T-spine. So what you're going to have to focus on is lifting the pelvis, slightly posteriorly tilting the pelvis after that, and then from there retracting the shoulder blades. But you're almost going to have to do them all at once, and I'll show you what that's going to look like. So I'll put the stick on the swell of my back. So I'm going to, likely the dysfunction that you're probably going to elicit if you've never really done tried to properly execute a plank. So I'll have the kyphosis, I'll have the anterior pelvic shift, I'll have the extended lower abdomen, and what I'm going to do from here is actually shift the pelvis posteriorly, lifting it upward, posteriorly tilting the pelvis, retracting the scapula, and then I'm going to access my transverse abdominis through the retraction of my navel, not tightening my abdomen, but just retracting my navel as I retract my scapula. Something else you can also do here to ensure that your T-spine musculature is giving you support is taking a nice deep breath and then sending it into your thoracic spine, sending the breath into your rib cage and into your T-spine. So you'll hang out there. By the time you end up doing that, you should begin to feel your core work significantly. Now, in terms of doing progressions of planks where you see people kind of go here, putting this on the swell of their back, they'll go into their, that wasn't very good. If I go here, they'll do some kind of a plank progression where they'll be here, they're on their feet, they'll lift one leg off the ground, lift one arm off the ground, they'll be doing stuff like this, extending out. Most of the time you won't find too many people that are going to have the strength to keep that stick on the swell of their back as they're moving, and that's mainly because they never learned how to do it correctly at a foundation. Before you move on into any of the fancy stuff with lifting your legs off the ground and progressing it to activate your core, you have to make sure that you're orienting that muscle activity from the right areas. It has to start in the transverse abdominis first because the TVA, transverse abdominis, is the one that orients your center when it comes to most of your movement. It has to start from there. If it doesn't, that's where you start getting a lot of muscular compensations when you're doing any movements in reality.